It's funny, yesterday, Eunice, you were telling me, joins us live from Beijing, we were off the air for a while, and then I was recounting one of these Twitter feeds that was saying that China is gloating about how and they turned us on so they could hear me saying that they had done a great job and that they were gloating on the pandemic. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That is unbelievable how that works.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We were taken off while we were talking about more sensitive issues, such as Tiananmen Square, and then once you started, speaking highly of what's happening in China, or at least when we were talking about what the state media was saying and how China is quite proud that it's done a good job of getting on top of the situation very quickly with the coronavirus, unlike, say, in the United States, where things have not been handled quite as well from China's perspective, you definitely came back on air.
All right. So what do we have? What do you have for us in terms of? Everything's opening.
Well, today there was a message from the Foreign Ministry to President Trump, because the Foreign Ministry was back in action after the long Labor Day holiday. And the message to President Trump was that tariffs should not be used as a weapon. As you guys know, President Trump had last week suggested that he could impose fresh tariffs or other retaliatory measures on China as payback for the virus. Right now, at least most of the people that I talked to here still believe, or at least maybe hope, that this is all just rhetoric. But Morgan Stanley did come up with a couple of things that they're watching for. Because, one, they say that President Trump said that he's coming up with a report that could potentially show what China's role is, at least from Washington's perspective, in the virus spread. Morgan Stanley says how harsh that report is and the tone of it is going to be really important. Morgan Stanley also said that they're watching how quickly China will ramp up its purchases of U.S. agricultural products into the fall. Right now, China has been steadily buying U.S. ag, such as soybeans. And finally, Morgan Stanley said that they are monitoring if a second wave of infections hurts the U.S. economy to the point that it nullifies the political value of a trade deal with China. So those are the things that Morgan Stanley is watching. But everybody that I've spoken to so far, both foreign business people as well as Chinese business people, are all telling me the same thing, which is that at this point, to upend the trade deal would just be really devastating for them, because they're already dealing with so many issues because of the pandemic. On the demand side, they're worried about customers not buying it. They're worried about their supply chain still getting things back and forth, workers, pay, all of this stuff. And the trade deal really is seen here as the only thing that's kind of keeping the U.S. China relationship together, because the tensions have been so high. So most people are hoping that this just stays as rhetoric, and that it doesn't really go much further than that.
That's interesting. So now that both sides are now sort of happy about the trade deal. I always sort of thought that China was like, we'll do it, but we're not real happy about it. So now people are both clinging to it as something that shows that there's at least dialogue going on between the two countries. You can answer that, or Andrew.
Well, I think it's all relative.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It's all relative. I mean, I don't think that China was thrilled necessarily. I mean, both sides have reasons why they didn't like the trade deal, right? But at the same time, because China right now is worried about its economy. It's worried about the jobs market. It really doesn't need to have tariffs slapped on, not only on the U.S. companies that would be dealing with it, but also all of these factories that would be dealing with it and their suppliers. And it's just another level of uncertainty that a lot of companies here don't want to have to deal with at this point.
Hey, Eunice, question for you. I hear from some people in the medical community in the United States, all of whom are still looking for PPE. And clearly so much of the PPE that's coming to the United States or that's needed in the United States still comes from China. And so when they hear this kind of rhetoric back and forth from the administration and the U.S. side and then, of course, on the Chinese side, there's some anxiety and worry. Could it be not just that the United States tries to impose tariffs on China, but that China makes it more difficult for the United States to get PP at this critical time?
Yeah, that's definitely been a concern. I've spoken to a lot of people who manufacture or are agents for PPE to try to get PPE to the United States. And there was, there actually still is a group of people who believe that the government has been holding on to the most critical products, such as ventilators or such as the N95 mask. So there are people who believe that. There isn't evidence that the government for sure is doing that purposefully in order to try to make things difficult for the United States. Could be that also China has been concerned about its own situation. So there have been some suppliers that we've spoken to who said that the supply is being controlled by government authorities just because they are worried about their own situation getting out of control here. If there's a second wave, if there's a third wave, but to really directly pin it on to the Chinese government's intention to try to stall some of these the shipments to the United States, it's still very, very uncertain.